The struggle of a plant to secure variation in its offspring does not end with the seed, said Mr. Burbank. It only begins there. In the tropics, a common tree near the seashore is the coconut palm. The coconuts which we find in our market, their hard shells outermost are but the inside portion of the nuts as they grew on these trees. When they were gathered, there was a fibrous substance surrounding the shell, an inch or two in thickness, a woody fiber torn off by the shippers to cut down the cost of freight and cartage. Around this excelsior-like covering, as the nut grew on the tree, there was a skin-tight, waterproof cover with a smooth or even shiny surface. At the top of the nut, as it would stand if it floated in water, are three well-defined eyes. Since these coconut palms grow usually Since these coconut palms grow usually along the water's edge, the nuts often roll into a brook or a river or the ocean and float away. Once detached from the tree and started on such a journey, the eyes disclose their purpose. Two of them begin to grow out a system of roots, not on the outside of the coconut, but growing at first within the woody fiber between the shell and the outside skin. The coconut's three eyes. As this coconut falls in the water, one of the eyes shown at the top throws up a sail-like leaf, while the other two begin to throw out a mass of roots within the excelsior-like covering, but inside of the waterproof cover of the nut, which for the purpose of illustration has been removed. When the sail has carried the nut to a new environment, the roots burst forth, and the sail grows into a taller stalk, which finally becomes the trunk of the new palm. At the same time, the other eye pushes out sail-like leaves, extending several inches above the outer casing. Then, with sails set and aided by the current of the stream, the nut starts out on its journey to find an environment of its own. Once landed, after weeks perhaps of travel, the roots which have been growing inside force their way out into the moist soil at the water's edge. The sail leaves begin to grow into stalks, which later develop into the trunk of the tree. The waves start to build new ground by washing sand around it, and the first page in the history of a new palm in a new environment is written. The hard shell surrounding the stored up milk in the coconut is there, obviously as a protection from the monkeys to prevent extermination through their liking for the milk. And that excelsior packing and that waterproof housing, are these not as plainly the palm's attempt to provide for its baby tree a new environment? We do not have to go to the tropics for evidences like these. There is probably no more familiar weed in our vacant lots than the common dandelion. Who can forget its feathery seed ball waiting, when ripe, for the first youngster on the first draft of air to blow it away on its long sail through the air as it distributes its seeds, some on stones perhaps, and some on plowed ground, such a multitude of seeds that, though many be lost, some will find themselves throwing roots into new soil, rearing their heads into new air, starting life in a new environment. Or we might learn a lesson from one of the wild chicories, which provides some of its seeds with wings to fly, while others it leaves wingless. These seeds without wings fall at the feet of the parent plant, as if to keep green the old family home, while those with wings fly to start new families under new conditions where latent traits and tendencies, latent elements of weakness or strength may cooperate to produce a better chicory, or from that joy of childhood, the squirting cucumber, which when ripe fires its seeds mixed up in its milky contents, with such force that they are sometimes carried a distance of 12 to 15 feet, or even the sweet pea, our garden pea, which, when their seeds have dried, have the ability to throw them some distance from the parent plant. In Mexico, there is the familiar jumping bean tree which calls in an insect to aid in the distribution of its seeds. While these beans are still green, they are visited by a moth which lays her eggs in them. As they ripen, the grub hatches out and lives upon the food stored within. As if in partnership with the moth, the jumping bean tree has provided food for her offspring, so that the larva has plenty to eat without injuring the seed within the bean. And the grub, as it hollows out the bean and jumps out within it, causes it to turn and rolls it into a new environment, repays its family debt to the tree which gave it food. In the wooded mountains near Santa Rosa, there grows a pine tree which has worked out an ingenious scheme for taking advantage of occasional forest fires to aid it in its reproduction. Most other trees mature their nuts or seeds and shed them every season. The animals may eat the fruit and carry the seeds afar, or take the nuts to new environments, or the seedlings may come up at the foot of the parent tree, but the process of seed bearing and seed shedding usually completes its cycle every fall. The pine tree referred to, however, does not shed its seeds in this way, nor is there any inducement in them or their covering to tempt an animal to carry them away. They grow in clusters about the trunk and branches, but remain attached to the tree. The cones which hold them do not even open. Sometimes 9 or 10 crops of these seed cones may be observed clinging to a parent tree. But whenever the woods are visited by a forest fire, the cones are dried out by the heat and the seeds released fall to the ground and sprout. In the localities in which these trees grow, there would be little chance for their seeds to germinate. In fact, except for a forest fire had cleared the ground. Except after a forest fire had cleared the ground. Against the competition of all the hardy underbrush to be found in those localities, the mother tree, it would seem, fears that her seeds will have but a poor chance. Yet when the fires have cleared the ground and killed almost every other living thing, these seeds spring up almost as quickly and almost as thickly as grass on a lawn, and competition removed. They grow with surprising rapidity into the making of a new forest. It has been observed that these trees grow usually along the sides of deep canyons where the destructiveness of the fires is the greatest, and only in canyons where forest fires are frequent, showing that without the aid of the fires, the tree cannot perpetuate itself. So firmly fixed has this partnership between the fires and this particular pine tree become. So firmly fixed has this partnership between the fires and this particular pine tree become that its seeds, if planted under other conditions, will not germinate. Taken from the tree, it is impossible to get them to grow even with the greatest care in good soil, but experiment has shown that if placed for a few hours in boiling water, they will readily sprout even in poor soil. Thus, as if through a strange alliance, the forest fires clear the ground, scatter the cones, and prepare the seed of this pine tree for germination, and the pine tree in turn rebuilds the forest which the fires destroyed. The devil's claw, a tropical relative of our The devil's claw, a tropical relative of our unicorn plant, has developed the power to bite and to hold on with almost bulldog grip in its scheme of providing new environments for its young. This plant, growing low on the ground among other tropical vegetation where the distribution of seed becomes a problem, grows a seed pod of 7 inches or more in length. The devil's claw. As it grows in the tropics, the seed pod of the devil's claw, or martiaya, shown above, resembles a large gourd in color and in texture of its covering. Since succeeding prints show how it transforms itself to bite and hold onto passing animals with a bulldog grip. Its seed pod, while maturing, is encased in a pulpy covering with a thick green skin, and its bulb and hook suggest some kind of gourd. When the seeds within are mature, the outside covering splits and peels away, disclosing a seed nest which is armored with spines more thickly than a prickly pear. That which, during its early stages, formed the hook, now spreads into 2 branches with pointed ends sharper than pins, almost as sharp as needles. Between these 4-inch hooks, where they join, the spiny bulb behind them, there appears a hole from which the seeds, if loosened from their former pulpy support, may, by pounding and thumping, find their way out into the world. As the seed pod lies on the ground, its sharp hooks coiled in exactly the right position, it awaits a passing animal. This spring trap may remain set for many months, but once an animal, big or small, steps between those fish hook points, their mission is accomplished. The first slight kick or struggle to get away embeds them deeply, and at each succeeding struggle, the hooks bite in and in and in until finally the animal, in its efforts for release, pulls the seed pod from the plant and starts to run. The devil's claw. In this print, it will be seen that the gourd-like covering is being shed, and that what at first seemed to be but a single stem has separated into 2 wiry prongs. This seed pod is attached to the plant by a stem which joins it at the bottom of the picture shown above. Swinging to a leg or tail, suspended by the 2 sharp points of its sprung, the spiny housing of the seed pod comes now into play. At each bound or jump, the pod flops up and down, and its prickly points, adding to the pain of the ever-pinching hooks, are sure to keep the animal in motion. As a frightened beast makes haste to get away from an enemy which it cannot see, the seeds within the pod begin to loosen and fall out on the ground. When the last seed has left its shelter, the trap begins to fall apart, its object accomplished, its seeds scattered throughout a mile or more of new environment. The devil's claw. Having completely shed its gourd-like covering, and with its jaws set for a passing animal, it will be seen that the pod itself is covered with prickly spines. When the fish hook points of the prongs bite into the leg of an animal, the whole contrivance becomes balanced from that point, and at each jolt and jounce, the heavier body of the pod pounds down upon the leg, its spines causing great pain. There is an opening between the 2 prongs at the upper end of the pod itself, from which the seeds come out at every bounce. When these are scattered over a mile or 2 of new environment, the pod falls apart. The sailor is awed by the mountains, and the mountaineer is awed by the sea, and we too are more apt to wonder at the jumping beans of Mexico, at the devil's claw of the equator, than at the cherry tree in our own backyard, which outdoes both of these by forming a double partnership. Just as the geranium bids for the bees, so the cherry blossom, with its delicate pink and its store of honey, advertises for butterflies and bees to bring the pollen from a neighboring tree. And this partnership concluded, the accounts balanced and the books closed. It then seeks new partners in the birds. That delicious meat around the seed, that shiny skin of red, and that odor of the cherry as it ripens, these are a part of the advertisement to thee. Birds or animals, a lure to get them to eat the fruit and carry the seed as far as they may to a new environment. Shall we wonder at the jumping bean and the devil's claw when our own cherry tree is getting the beast to give its offspring new heredities and the bird to surround these heredities with new environments in which to grow? Wherever we look, we see a new display of ingenuity, all for the sake of variation which may mean retrogression as well as advancement, but such infinite variation that surely there can be found 1 out of 1,000, or one out of 10,000, or 1 out of 1,000,000 better than those that went before. Every flower that delights our eye, and every fruit which pleases our palate, and every plant which yields us a useful substance is as delightful as it is, or as pleasing, or as useful as it is, simply because of the improvement which has been made possible through variation. No two living things are exactly alike. The rivalry of plants to please us. On the forward march of adaptation, we cut down our alfalfa 4 or 5 times a season, says someone. Why doesn't it grow spines to protect itself? We destroy our lettuce before it goes to seed. Why doesn't it develop a protective bitterness like the sagebrush? We rob our apple trees of all their fruit the moment they are ripe. Why do they not become poisonous like the desert euphorbias? Let us go back to the cactus, says Mr. Burbank, and read the answer. Grim and threatening though the cactus seems, it is not without its softer side. In the springtime its blossoms, a multitude of them push their way through the spiny armor and rival the rose in formation, compete with the orchid in the delicacy of their hues. No favorite garden flower can outdo this ungainly monster of the desert when in bloom, in the seductiveness of its advertisement to the bee. When the summer comes and the bee has paid by the service it has rendered, for the honey it has taken, the nest of fertile eggs beneath each cactus blossom begins to grow into a luscious fruit. In this cactus fruit there is an acid sweetness as tempting as that of the raspberry, the strawberry, or the pineapple. Its outward covering has a brilliant beauty, no less attractive than that of the cherry or the grape. Thus, in the springtime, the cactus, like the cherry, advertises to the friendly bees to bring its offspring new heredities, and in the fall, it advertises to the friendly birds to carry off its seed and plant it where its young may have the advantage of new environments. In its spiny armor, we read the plant's response to the enemies in its environment. In its brilliant flowers and tempting fruit, we read its receptiveness to the friendship of the birds, the bees. Those spines and those flowers and fruits tell us that while its ancestors were fighting a common foe, they still found time to build up lasting partnerships. And so with every plant that grows, we shall see these same tendencies, instincts shall we call them, to ward off the enemy and make use of the friend. So long as plants grow wild, the frosts, the winds, the hailstorms, the droughts, and the animals are principal among the enemies with which they have to reckon. So long as they grow in the woods or on the mountains or in the deserts, the bees and the birds and the butterflies, the warmth of the sun and moisture of the soil, these are among the friendly factors in their lives. But when we take plants under cultivation, we upset their whole environment. We build fences around our blackberries so that they need no thorns. We save the seeds of our radishes and the bulbs of our lilies, and through human organization distribute them and plant them wherever they will grow. We cut slips from our apple trees and ship them from county to county and state to state and nation to nation and zone to zone. We select and improve and plow and harrow the ground for our plants. We water them when they are dry. We surround them with shade trees if they need shade. We cut down the shade trees if they prefer the sun. We plant their baby seedlings under glass and give them every favoring condition in which to mature. We remove what for ages have been the chief problems of their lives. We take over their two prime burdens, the burdens of self-defense and reproduction. The frosts and the winds, and the hailstorms and the droughts and the animals are no longer the chief enemies of plants, for man, when he comes into their environment, is more dreadful than all of these combined, if he chooses to destroy. And the bees and the birds and the butterflies and the warmth of the sun and the moisture in the soil fade into insignificance as friendly influences when compared with that of man, if it pleases him to be a friend. So the geranium still advertises to the bees and the cherry to the butterflies and birds as of old, but their main advertisement now is an advertisement to us. Their strongest effort now that we have become predominant in their lives is to lure us with their blossoms and their fruit, to enchant us with their odors and colors and lusciousness, as they formerly enchanted only the bees, to win and hold our appreciation and affection and merit our kindly attention and care.